A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down. According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, is set to bring immortality to the nation of Israel, the elect, via establishing the tabernacle of David, as we talk about the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. He is coming to take down this current world ruled by Esau, Edom, and establish a righteous kingdom, which is synonymous with the throne of David. That's scriptural, which is a government that's going to run this world in righteousness. Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel, but it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals, perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies will be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies, like eating, drinking. Did not Yahweh Shai say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those new bodies.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who may have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al-Shai. All right. What I want to get into today is continue on in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 23. All right, the mighty house of David, as he goes into some of King David's last words. And also, it goes into his mighty men. All right. And we have to understand that that house is back. Okay. Those spirits, that was back during the time, of King David. Those conquering men, okay, they're faithful, nation of people, amongst all 12 tribes. Well, they're back today. Those spirits are back. They're scattered throughout the earth. A lot of them here in America, okay. But that house, all right, that spiritual house is back. Okay, now let's get right into it. When you go to the book of 2 Samuel, okay, 23. Okay. Said David's last song. Okay, now get this in the NLT. And he was in the spirit. these first 7 verses. He's in the spirit. Okay, this is 2 Samuel 23:1. It says, now these be the last words of David. David, the son of Jesse, said, and the man who was raised up on high, the anointed of the power of Jacob, and the sweet psalmist of Israel said, the spirit of the Lord spake by me, and his word was in my tongue. Because we understand that we're vessels, man. All right, and King David, when we know also, to be a prophet. Okay, and the Lord speaks, what, through the prophets, man. Matter of fact, let's see if we can get that. I think that's in Acts. Yeah, get that in Hosea. All right, where you go? Let's get this in Hosea. All right, chapter 12 and 10. Okay, it's the book of Hosea, chapter 12, verse 10. Okay, it says, I sent my prophets to warn you with many visions and parables. Okay, you read this in the KJV. Okay, Hosea 12 and 10. It says, I have also spoken, okay, by the prophets. Okay, so the prophets, spiritual men, are vessels that the Lord uses to speak through. That's why you go into Psalms. All right, all those Psalms. Okay, that's the Most High speaking through His men. A lot of those Psalms come from David. Some from Asaph. A Levite. Who was head of King David's choir. Okay, and a few other men. All right, but the Lord speaks through His prophets. Okay, if that man is truly tapped into the spirit, then the Lord is using, all right, these men. Okay, the Lord uses His men as a mouthpiece, man. It says, I have multiplied visions and used similitudes by the ministry of the prophets, man. Okay, and the prophets has always been, the Lord's go-between between Him and Israel. Okay, the Levites, they did the sacrifice. Okay, but then you have the office of the prophet, the ministry of the prophet. They will come, with their straight word of the Most High to the people. Okay, let's go here to Jeremiah. All right, this is Jeremiah chapter 1. Okay, it's the book of Jeremiah chapter 1, and I started at 8. I started at 7. It said, the Lord replied, don't say I'm too young, for you must go wherever I send you, and say whatever I tell you. And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken. And see, this is why the prophets, are hated amongst our people, because the Lord, He commissioned prophets, to be straight shooters, and tell it what it is. All right. And a lot of our people, emotional as hell, they feel some type of way about what's said, but that doesn't sway us any. The Lord told us, don't even be concerned about them, making their forehead hard. Make your forehead harder, man. Okay, and says that don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken. Verse 9. Then the Lord reached out and touched my mouth and said, look, I have put my words in your mouth. So King David, which was the office of the king, if you can receive it, a priest, all right, and a prophet. Okay. So the Lord was dealing tough, when it came to King David. All right. So back in 2 Samuel 23 and 2, it said, the Spirit of the Lord speaks through me. His words are upon my tongue. All right. It says, the power of Israel spoke. The rock of Israel said to me, the one who rules righteously, who rules in the fear of the Most High. Now you get this in the KJV verse 3. Okay. Because King David, he set a standard, on how kings should be. Okay. The intent. All right. This is on the KJV, 2 Samuel 23 and 3 said, the power of Israel said, all right, the rock of Israel spake to me, he that ruleth over men must be just. All right, ruling in the fear of the Most High. Okay, and this is what this grace period is for us to learn how to be just rulers. This is why we've been humble, and brought so low, because this is our training grounds to learn how to be just rulers. Okay, because you look at the heathens and how they will rule. Okay, it will be from a position of pride, a position of tyranny. Okay, it wouldn't be in a position of righteousness, man. You know, you had a few, but overall, all these heathens will have corruptible rulerships, man. And even amongst Jake, all right, there was only a few, good kings. Okay, so this what we're going through is the Lord purging us to be just rulers. Okay, matter of fact, let's go here real quick in the book of Isaiah to prove that Isaiah 1. He that rule the people must be just. The Lord puts emphasis on rulership, leadership. And this is why this leadership of Esau Edom is about to be addressed in a major way. Okay? And in fact, let's read this. It said this Isaiah 1 and 21. It says, see how Jerusalem, once so faithful, has become a prostitute. Okay, and it's talking about spiritual harlots, man. Dealing with other deities, other gods. Okay? They're scared, perverted, our righteousness, man. Till we begin to behave and reason like the heathen. It said, once the home of justice and righteousness, she is now filled with murderers. Okay? Because the leadership, had become very corrupt. And when you're in power, your decision making can cause people to die, man. That's why rulership is so important. Okay, because poor rulership can cost many their life. So you had Jake that was into like we went, they was okay with Molech worship, children sacrifice. Okay, when Jake had just was going off, man, the Queen of Heaven, Jake was just doing things that put Israel in bad standards with Yahweh Shema Shai. A false prophet or poor leadership is like a serial killer, man, because it caused many of people to be put to death, and we're finna see that in this time, man. Even amongst Israel, those that know they're Israelites, all right, we're going to see the consequences of poor leadership. Okay, not moving in justice, man. All right, not being just, and sincere. This is Isaiah 1 and 21. It says, see how Jerusalem, once so faithful, has become a prostitute. Once the home of justice and righteousness, she is now filled with murderers. Once like pure silver, you have become like worthless slag. Once so pure and are now like watered down wine. Okay? Because good leadership is a precious thing. Remember, one of King David men told him, like, look, you can't come to war with us anymore, man, because he almost got killed by the giant. They were like, look, you got to fall back. You worth 10,000 of us. You see, they understood the value of good leadership. Okay, like a pound of gold is worth 1,000. 1 pound of gold, all right, way more than brass. Okay, wood. You see, because it's precious, it's rare. And good leadership, righteous leadership is rare. And the Lord is gathering all his righteous leaders, which make up the house of David, which is going to make up the governing body of Yahweh Shah, 144,000. It's going to be a very valuable government that the Lord is going to establish in the earth, man. All right, verse 23. And this is the Lord rebuking the leadership. It says, your leaders are rebels, the companions of thieves. All of them love bribes and demand payouts, but they refuse to defend the cause of the orphans or the rights, all right, for the or fight for the rights of widows. Okay, so you look at Jake today, from Jake that's in the world, okay, to Jake that's in Israel that's sold out. You know, they've made they've turned their office or these positions in Israel into a scheme, a scam. You know, they're being paid off to lead Jake astray. It isn't no coincidence that you have all these, confusion amongst Israel. We constantly got to go back into the hell doctrine. You got to go back into Gog and Magog. Got to go back into this, which that's what we do. Okay? But why do we have to do this? Because Jake got this rebellious spirit that just want to cause confusion, man. The leadership. Okay? The leadership, a lot of Israelite leaders are just all over the place, man. And you go into the orphans and the widows, that's the elect. Okay? Because the orphan or widow is someone that will be vulnerable in the society. All right, and they will have to depend on, all right, the leadership of the government, to make sure, all right, the elders, they will have to make sure, that they were being taken care of. Okay, and right now, all right, what do, all right, the hopeful elect need is spiritual nourishment, the spiritual daily bread. Okay, so the elect have, the office of making sure the most vulnerable of our people are taken care of, man, in the spirit. Okay, and it's the elect that just want to be taught. The hopeful elect that just want to be taught, man. Okay, it said, therefore, the Lord of heaven's armies, the mighty one of Israel, says, I will take revenge on my enemies and pay back my foes. Okay, and that's going into Esau and wicked leadership amongst Jake, man. Okay, it says, I will raise my fist against you. I will melt you down and scheme off your slag. All right, so I will melt you down and scheme off your slag. I will remove all your impurities, man. So the Lord is going to purge the nation. He's going to remove 2/3. And it's an individual purge, even on the elect. And he's removing the slag off of us, man. All the impurities and the filth, that we picked up in this society, man. Okay? And why is he doing this? Verse 26. Then I will give you good judges again and wise counselors like you used to have. Then Jerusalem would again be called the home of justice and the faithful city. So the house of David is being raised up, man. Okay, because the Lord's going to establish good leadership, solid, thorough, spiritual, righteous, okay, men of honor and leadership, man. Okay, it says Zion will be restored by justice. Those who repent will be revived by righteousness, man. Okay, so the Lord is raising up a righteous governing body, okay, for Israel and for the earth, man. Okay, while Scripture say the welfare of the wise is in the hand, the welfare of the world is in the hands of the wise. Okay, so let's go back here to 2 Samuel in verse 2 Samuel 23. All right, this is the book of 2 Samuel 23. All right, and 4, it said, is it like the light of morning at sunrise, like a morning without clouds, like the gleaming of the sun on new grass after rain? It says, is not my family, all right, is not my family, all right, the power has chosen. Yes, he has made an everlasting covenant with me. His agreement is arranged and guaranteed in every detail. He will ensure my safety and success. And you read this in the KJV as well. Okay, you go down, and it says, although my house be not so with the Most High, yet he have made an everlasting covenant, order in all things, and sure, for this is all right, for this is all my salvation and all my desire, although he made it not to grow. So even though it wasn't the time of the fulfillment, of these promises and these covenants, that covenant is still sure. The covenant made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the covenant made with, all right, King David. Okay, and Yahweh came to confirm those promises, man. Okay, when you go here, let's get Romans 15. You see, this covenant is everlasting. Okay, and the Lord, is a man that you cannot lie. Okay, we've been chastened, but that doesn't make the covenant, void. Okay, so let's get this here. This is the book of Romans chapter 15 and verse 8. Okay, the book of Romans chapter 15 and verse 8. It says, now I say that Yahushua was a minister of the circumcision for the truth of the Most High, to confirm the promises made unto the fathers. Okay, so Yahushua, he came, his sacrifice confirmed the promises made unto the fathers, man. Okay, and Christians trying to take, the Messiah as if he came, just remix everything that was in the Old Testament. That he made things void, null and void in the New Testament, in the Old Testament. Okay, they tried, this a narrative of Christianity is the Messiah just came and started things. It just started a whole new narrative. Everyone's included now, and just believe and confess in Jesus. And no, man, this is the same narrative of the Old Testament that Yahushua was coming to confirm with his own life, man, with his own blood. Okay, those covenants stand forever. You see, they never change. All right. we was always set to be redeemed, even from the beginning. Like I was saying earlier in the live screen. Let's get that in Ephesians 1. Okay, Ephesians 1 and 3. It says, um, let me get this NLT really. So you get this in verse 3, Ephesians 1 and 3 says, blessed be the power and Father of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach, who have blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Hamashiach, according as he have chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. Okay, so the elect were chosen before the foundation of the earth. Okay, and the elect is of Israel. Okay, so all these promises, is made to our forefathers. Okay, those promises only, all right, pertain to Israel. That's why even you go here, the book of Romans, back to the basics. All right, the book of Romans chapter 9. Okay, verse 3 says, for I wish, this is Apostle Paul speaking, that I myself were accursed from Mashiach, for my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants. You see, with the S, the old covenant and the new covenant, and the giving of the law, and the service of the Most High, and the promises. Okay? So all these things, the adoption being brought back in, even when you go to this word adoption in the blue letter. Okay? Let's get this word, the adoption in the Greek.
Strong's G 5206. We are Thesia. We are Thesia.
All right. And you read into it. And it reads adoption is sons. All right. Sons of God. It says, definition 1, it says their relationship which the Most High was pleased to establish between himself and the Israelites in preference to all other nations. The relationship which the Most High was pleased to establish between himself and the Israelites in reference to all other nations. Okay? So that promise, the adoption, is only pertaining to Israel. The covenants, the promises only pertain to Israel. King David was promised he would have a son to sit the throne. Okay? So even, 1,000 years later, okay, the throne of David is still, okay, a topic, okay, amongst, let me see. Matter of fact, I think that's Luke 1. Okay? It's still a topic amongst Israel, the throne of David, and their son, all right, that was going to sit that throne forever. Okay? And the angel, what did he tell Mary? All right, this is Luke 1 and 31. All right, this is what Gabriel told Mary. It says, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yahushua. He shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Highest. Okay, that's what in 2 Samuel 7. Nathan told King David, the Most High said that his son will be his son. Okay, and the Lord power shall give unto him the throne of his father David. Okay, so this is the one that was going to be born to fulfill, all right, their promise to King David. Okay, Yahushua is coming to establish what? The throne of David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom there shall be no end. All right, because it's going to be a righteous kingdom. Okay, sin put us in captivity. Well, every Israelite is going to be changed, beginning with the elect. And the 2/3 that died, they're going to be born into the new covenant. Okay, all our people shall be righteous. That's a promise. Okay, and it said, verse 23 and 6, it says, but the sons of Belial, okay, and it's speaking to you devils, man. All right, you Edomites, you heathens as well, but you devils, all right, the nation of rebellion, the man of sin, shall be all of them as thorns thrust away, because they cannot be taken with hands. There's nothing you can do with the nation of Edom but destroy them. Like thorns. You can't do nothing with thorns. Okay, you'll hurt yourself. You'll harm yourself trying to make thorns useful, man. Okay, Esau can't be made useful. His ain't gonna be discarded. Okay, it says, but the man that shall touch them must be fenced with iron and the staff of a spear. Yeah, so the only way to deal with Esau is gonna be through war. Okay, with iron and the staff of a spear. It's gonna be no missiles, man. All right, that iron spear. That's what's gonna be the iron spear that's gonna get Esau out of here, man. Okay, and they shall be utterly burned with fire. Like those nukes in the same place. Okay, so it talks about righteous rulership. Then he goes into the destruction of the wicked through nuclear destruction, man. See, the nuclear destruction is all throughout the scriptures, man. Okay, showing you that this thing was predestined before, any type of technology for a missile, thousands of years before any missile was ever, used in warfare. All right, this was being prophesied that this is how these devils, their empire, their age would end. Okay, verse 8. Now this goes into the mighty men, so we're gonna read down, because guess what? The Lord is gonna lift a standard, man. And this is what the men of the house of King David, was on. Verse 8. It said, these are the names of David's mightiest warriors. The first was Jehoshaphat, the Hankamanite, who was the leader of the three mightiest warriors among David men. He used a spear. All right, he used his spear to kill 800 enemy warriors in a single battle, man. That's crazy, man. You look at these MMA fights and you see how tired they be after 2 rounds. But to kill 800 men in hand-to-hand combat, that's crazy, man. Showing you that the Lord had a spirit on this house, man. On the ranks of King David, and those men are back, scattered throughout the earth, man. Okay. It says next in rank among the 3 was Eleazar, son of Dudai, a descendant of Ahohiah. All right. Once Eleazar and David stood together against the Philistines when the entire Israelite army had fled. He killed Philistines until his hands were too tired to lift his sword, and the Lord gave him a great victory that day. The rest of the army did not return until it was time to collect the plunder. Next in rank was Shammah, son of Agi, from Horah. One time the Philistines gathered at Lee and attacked the Israelites in the field of lentils. The Israelite army fled, but Shammah held his ground in the middle of the field and beat back the Philistines. So the Lord brought about a great victory. Once during the harvest, when David was at the cave of Adullam, the Philistines' army was camped in the valley of Rephaim. The 3 who were among the 30, an elite group among David's fighting men, went down to meet him there. David was staying in the stronghold at the time, and the Philistine detached had occupied the town of Bethlehem. David remarked longingly to his men, "Oh, how I would love some of that good water from the well by the gate of Bethlehem. So King David, he thirst. He wanted that water from the well of Bethlehem, but the Philistines had it occupied. So the three broke through the Philistines' lines, drew some water from the well by the gate of Bethlehem, and brought it back to David, but he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out as an offering unto the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai. And that's how, loyal those men were. They did not play, about King David, man. These men, all right, and these are the top 30, but you had thousands of men, all right, that didn't play about their king, man. See, men had a different type of loyalty and integrity and honor back then, okay? And it's coming back, amongst the body now, amongst the brothers. That's a beautiful thing about this ministry, all right? And we ain't got to show it on camera. So we experiencing it, we living it, It says the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shai, forbid that I should drink this, he exclaimed. This water is as precious as the blood of these men who risked their lives to bring it to me. So David did not drink it. These are examples of the exploits of the three. And they're just a few stories that we're getting. It's plenty of stories. This is just a day in the life. That's why Hushai was telling Absalom, like, look, you don't want to go out there with them guys, man. Okay, I don't care how tough you young niggas think you are. You don't want to go out there with them, All right, verse 18, it says, Abishai's son is Uriah, the brother of Joab, was a leader of 30. He once used his spear to kill 300 enemy warriors in a single battle. It was by such feats that he became as famous as the three. Abishai was the most famous of the 30, which this was King David's nephew, all right, and was their commander, all right, though he was not one of the three, It said there was also Benaniah, son of Joadiah, a valiant warrior, and Benaniah would eventually become, the personal bodyguard of King Solomon, all right, which we'll get into it when we go into the book of Kings, Razazah. It says a valiant warrior from Kabzeel. He did many heroic deeds, which including killing 2 champions of Moab. Another time on a snowy day, he chased a lion down into a pit and killed it. Army. It says once army only with a club. Armed only with a club, he killed a great Egyptian warrior who was armed with a spear. Benaniah wrenched, all right, the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with it. And he's some bad men, some assassins, man. Said these like these made Benaniah as famous as the 3 mightiest warriors. He was more honored than the other members of the 30, though he was not one of the 3, and David made him captain of his bodyguard. Other members of the 30 included Ashahal, Joab's brother, the one that was killed by Abner, Elihanan, son of Dedah from Bethlehem, Shammah from Herod, Elikah from Harad, Helzer from Pelon, Ira, son of Akish from Tekoa, Abiazar from Anathoth, all right, Sabakiah from Hushan, Zalman from Anah, Mariah from Nathapah, Halid, son of Benah from Nathapah, Athiah, son of Rabiah from Ganah in the land of Benjamin, Benaniah from Pirathon, Hariah from Nahal Gaash, Abi Abon from Araba, Asmavath from Barim, Elabah from Shaban, the sons, all right, Jashin, Jonathan, son of Sage from Harah, Hahim, son of Sha'ar from Harah, Eliphit, son of Abishai from Makkah, Eliam, son of Athaphel from from Galah, Hezrah from Carmel, all right, Parah from Abah, Egal, son of Nathan from Zabah, Bani from Gad, Zalak from Ammon, Nahariah from Barah, Joab's armor bearer, all right, Irah from Jatar, Garab from Jatar, Uriah the Hittite, which Uriah was one, I think that's the one that King David, conspired against to have him, put to death. It said there were 30 37 in all, man. All right. So these 37 men, were the elite, amongst, David's forces. Okay. You can tell those men had special powers, man, had spiritual powers to be able to do what they was doing. Okay. And that's coming back because okay. Matter of fact, let's get this in Hosea, chapter 5, and then we'll get that. Might be Micah, Salaki. Micah chapter 5. All right, in verse 7, it said, then the remnant, all right, Micah 5 and 7, then the remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like the dew sent by the Lord, or like rain falling on the grass, which no one can hold back and no one can restrain. So this is the elect scattered. The dew of grass is everywhere. So this is the elect scattered everywhere. All right, and when you read on, it says the remnant left in Israel will take their place among the nations. They will be like a lion among the animals of the forest, like a strong young lion among flocks and sheep and goats, pouncing and tearing as they go, with no rescue in sight. So the Lord gonna lift a standard, for these men. All right, the house of David that's scattered through the earth, man. And when that standard is lifted, man, these people are going to be helpless as a lion amongst sheep. Okay, completely helpless, man, and no rescue in sight. All right, it says, verse 9, it says, the people of Israel will stand up to their foes, and all their enemies will be wiped out, man. Okay, the Lord finna lift a standard, man. All right, it's a great victory coming for Israel. And this is why the house of David was raised up, man. Okay, for this point. All right, for this purpose, man. Okay, and this promise. All right, and the Lord's going to tap into those men. Okay, this is get this in the KJV, Zechariah 12 and 8, and we'll close out. All right, Zechariah 12 and 8, and the KJV says, in that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them in that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as the Most High. All right, whereas the Elohim, like the angels. All right, and as the angel of the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah before them. So those mighty men, you best believe, and there's plenty more. They were just the 37 top, and those thousands and thousands, mighty men that surrounded King David. Okay, that was a hell of a house, man. Okay, and they was just running through heathens. Okay, and the heathen was just helpless, man. They had the aid of the chariots. Okay, so the Lord has raised up the house of David again. Okay, for the sake of conquering, man, under Yahushua. Okay, and the same loyalty that the men had towards King David, that loyalty is now, towards Yahushua, man. They ride or die spirit that they had, for King David. Okay, so yeah, see, brother. Yeah. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified, once again, give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great example to us younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations, hopefully, Shalom.